From the moment the British invaded Australia in 1788, they encountered active resistance from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander owners and custodians of the land. In the frontier wars, which continued until the 1960s, massacres became a defining strategy to eradicate that resistance. As a result, thousands of Aboriginal men, women, and children were killed. This was a very violent and gruesome thing for Indigenous Australians, an invasion to be honest. This video covers colonization, the impact of colonial Australia had on Indigenous people, particularly on children, and what could be the role of social workers in present context. To begin with, as of 3rd March 2019, at least 270 frontier massacres over a period of 140 years have been documented. The primary reasons of the massacre were struggle for land, theft, revenges for murders, lack of communication, and sometimes for no particular reason. The greatest attack on Indigenous cultures and family life was the forced separation or taking away of Indigenous children from their families. This occurred in every Australian state from the late 1800s until the practice was officially ended in 1969. During this time, as many as 100,000 children were separated from their families. These children became known as the Stolen Generation. The separation of children from their families placed Indigenous children into government-run institutions, adoption of children by white families, and the fostering of children into white families. The last two strategies were particularly applied to fair-skinned children. These forced separation were part of deliberate policies of assimilation. Their aim was to cut children off from their culture, to have them raised to think and act as white. The social and economic effect of invasion and control of Indigenous people has added across generations. It was magnified by policies and practices that have systematically disadvantaged Indigenous people. In many instances, this has resulted in the transmission of trauma, poverty, and other forms of disadvantage from generation to generation. So the disadvantage we see today is often the long-term effect of lack of opportunities in previous generations, including poor nutrition, inadequate education, and healthcare. Additionally, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are more likely than others in the community to experience problems commonly associated with child abuse and neglect. Several prominent inquiries conducted in Australia over the last few decades have highlighted concerns that children in some Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities are at high risk of experiencing abuse and neglect. A greater number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children were the subject of substantiations of neglect when compared with non-Indigenous children. Emotional abuse is the most commonly substantiated abuse type, which is 42.7%. Physical abuse being 14.7% and sexual abuse being 8.3% are the least common forms of substantiated harm. Many children are victims of more than one type of harm, and these data only represent the primary type of substantiated harm. The reasons why Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children might be more likely to be abused or neglected are complex and need to be approached with consideration of multiple historical, social, community, family, and individual factors. The Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Community Report 1997 concluded that some of the underlying causes for the poor outcomes experienced by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are the legacy of past policies of forced removal and cultural assimilation, intergenerational effects of forced removals, cultural differences between child protection agencies and their understandings of child-rearing practices. Additionally, now let's look at the policies that are in practice to protect these children. The National Framework for Protecting Australia's Children 2009 to 2020 aims to reduce child abuse and neglect and improve child protection responses for all Australian children, and also makes specific mention of the needs of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. The framework takes a public health approach to improving outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children through addressing issues of disadvantage, recognizing and promoting family, community, and cultural strengths, and using community-wide strategies to address specific risk factors such as alcohol or substance abuse or domestic violence. Also, another campaign named Family Matters, Strong Communities, Strong Culture, Stronger Children, led by Secretariat of National Aboriginal and Islander Childcare, aims to eliminate the overrepresentation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in out-of-home care by 2040. As part of the campaign, a Family Matters report was released in 2016 describing the overrepresentation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in out-of-home care and exploring the economic, social, and community-level factors that contribute to this overrepresentation. The second report, released in 2017, raises significant concern that the number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children living in out-of-home care will more than triple by 2036. The report makes recommendations for policy, practice, and systematic reform. There are no quick fixes of the fallout of colonization that we all are living with. However, the experience of the stolen generation has taught us that well-meant intervention with children and families can have long-term consequences. Social workers have acknowledged with regret the part our government have played in the policy, and they should be determined that it should not happen again. Long-term solutions can only be found by working closely and respectfully with Indigenous communities. The social worker needs to decide what to do. The most important thing is ensuring that the child is safe and their best interests are met. This is a fundamental human right found in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which Australia is also a signatory to. Let's not forget that the stolen generation is still living within memory of many Indigenous people. Similarly, when we look at the systematic failure of the child protection system highlighted in various media, Indigenous people are rightly wary and lacking in confidence in the child protection system. Nevertheless, Kalma suggests the role of social workers as human rights workers with the Indigenous people and community is inevitable.
Talking to others gives us a perspective and a context to the issue. It also gives us the opportunity to assess what are the impacts of the advocacy. If we are advocating for a child on a particular issue, we can assess how that might impact on other areas of the child's life by gaining information from others who are part of their lives. To assess the safety and the well-being of the child, and there may be at times when a child is wanting you to advocate for a circumstance or a situation that may put them at risk or that is already unsafe for them. And so an advocate needs to have a conversation with a child around the limitations of advocacy. An advocate could not seek an outcome for a child where it will put them at risk. If a child wants something that can't be achieved or might be bad for them, we need to be honest with the children around the limitations for advocacy. We would need to be honest with them about what risk there may be. In that, there would probably be some common ground. There's like a root cause to an issue that we may be able to find common ground and talk with the young people about the opportunities, where there are opportunities for advocacy. It's important not to promise that they're going to get the outcome necessarily that they want. And it's also important not to make promises that can't be kept. If an advocate has not assessed the impact that advocacy may have on the child's life, the child's relationships with key people and other areas of their life, then there may be unintended consequences. Part of undertaking advocacy, talking with the child about their views and showing that you understand their views, is also talking with them about what else is happening in their lives and how the advocacy itself may impact on that and whether they feel there's any issues.